So thank you everyone for joining. Those online, thanks for joining us. This is our 12th meeting of the Massachusetts Environmental Justice Advisory, the EJ Council. Before I get started, I want to allow one of our colleagues at ERG to provide some logistics and interpretation support.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kessel John, and I'm with ERG, a contractor who is supporting this effort. I'm going to start out by providing some meeting logistics for our Zoom attendees. So this presentation is available with virtual interpretation for Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean Creole, Vietnamese, Mandarin, and ASL. I'm now going to ask our interpreters to briefly say that sentence in their language in the English room, and then they're going to go back into their own rooms. So could our Spanish interpreter please say that?
A todos, para que sepan, este evento, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Este evento está disponible para la interpretación en español y otros idiomas. Van a ver el logo, un globito de interpretación y pueden seleccionar ahí el idioma español. Gracias.
Thank you. Portuguese.
Para entrar no canal em português, clique no ícone Interpretation e selecione português.
Thank you. Haitian Creole. Could our Haitian Creole interpreter quickly switch to the English room and just say to participate in Haitian Creole, click the interpretation icon in the English room.
Si vous avez présentation ça fait là en créole haïtien, s'il vous plaît, choisissez ça dans le bouton interprétation qui est en bas. Merci.
Thank you. Next is Cape Verdean Creole.
Para participar na crioulo, clica na ícone Interpretation e seleciona Cape Verdean Creole.
Thank you. Vietnamese.
Xin chào, hôm nay tôi sẽ hỗ trợ phần phiên dịch tiếng Việt ạ. Cảm ơn mọi người.
And Mandarin.
大家好，这里是普通话翻译一员。如果大家要想以普通话收听会议，请单击口语图标，并且选择中文 Chinese。谢谢。
Thank you. And our ASL interpreters should be visible now. So back to Zoom logistics. Zoom attendees should be able to use their desired interpretation channel by selecting the globe icon in their control panel and selecting your preferred language. English speakers should join the English room so they can hear any translated comments. Closed captioning will be auto-generated and is available if you click the CC icon in your Zoom panel. If you are a virtual attendee and would you like to use telephone audio for this meeting, please click on the small arrow next to the microphone icon, select Switch to Phone Audio, and follow the directions provided. Virtual attendees can email meetings@erg.com, which I will put in the chat shortly, with any technical questions related to the meeting logistics. If you would like a translated version of the presentation slides, please go to the Environmental Justice Council website, which will also be linked in the chat shortly. You'll find a translated set of presentation slides there as well. This meeting is being recorded and will be available later for viewing through a link that will be posted at the EJC website in the Meeting 12 link. If you'd like to ask questions during the comments portion or make a comment, please submit questions through the Q&A box. If you'd like to make a comment verbally, please raise your hand on Zoom and I can unmute you. If you are commenting in another language, please speak into your language channel and your interpreter will translate the comments into English. Or you may type a comment into the Q&A box and I can read it out loud. In-person attendees who are asking questions, please make sure you speak into the microphone so virtual attendees can hear you. Finally, for speakers, Please speak slowly to accommodate the interpreters. Please use simple language and minimize the use of acronyms. I would also like to remind council members to only use the chat function for meeting logistics and no other communication in accordance with open meeting law. We are also asking all virtual council members to leave their cameras on for this whole meeting. And now we'll turn it back to Maria Belen.
Thank you. Thanks, Kessel. So I am going to move ahead. First, I just want to thank the Mashpee Senior Center for hosting us, and also thank the council, because we are doing a lot of work to move these meetings hybrid to both virtual and in person, and I know it's not easy. And so just really grateful to ERG for all of the support in figuring, the language, accessibility, and then also the virtual accessibility for folks who can't come in person. And I will just mention briefly that I did want to add an agenda item in terms of following up from our last meeting. Marcos Luna had submitted an item around the EJ definition and what the council, I think he made a proposal of 2 options of what we should do in terms of moving ahead with the EJ definition. I will table that either for the next meeting or just some meeting in the future, because we will, he's not here today, but also just for us to have enough time to consider and to review it. So that's an item that is not on the agenda, but just in terms of reviewing the agenda, if I can read with these glasses. So we'll do roll call, review agenda, review the minutes, approve the minutes. We'll do question and answer, question and comment period. We will then hear from Undersecretary Judge and Commissioners Rubin and Van Nostrand around their priorities of the Department of Public Utilities, and Undersecretary Judge around the CEISP, I believe is the right acronym, the Commission on Energy, Infrastructure, Siting, and Permitting, if I got that right. So just to get them, to sort of provide for the council an overview of the CEISP, and for the Department of Public Utilities, Commissioner Rubin and Chair Van Nostrand to share with us the priorities for the department on environmental justice. And then that will be a time for the council and the commissioners, as well as the undersecretary, to ask questions and to really sort of dig a little deeper into the topics that they'll be presenting on. And then we'll have another section for public comment period, and then we will do next steps and wrap it up. And so now I'll just like to introduce Chairman Whedon, Chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe, and just really grateful for him agreeing to come and join us for a little bit, and just want to provide a space for him to give welcoming remarks. And I know that a lot of folks are online, but just really grateful that you could make it. Thank you. And so I think this one is on.
Waninakan, Natuswis Mosquito, New Tomas Masipia, Kanatai Masipia. I said, good afternoon. My name is Bearheart. I come from Mashpee and I live in Mashpee. I'm Brian Whedon. I'm the chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. At this time, I'd like to read a prayer. It's a Pion Tamwonk, a prayer for every time. You can feel free to pray in your own way as well as I read this prayer. Manak ka niko nahachik, katabatanamu wachi wami kiakwasanish. Katabatanamu wachi kisak, katabatanamu wachi anakwasak, katabatanamu wachi aki, katabatanamu wachi sipawash, katabatanamu wachi katahanash, katabatanamu wachi wami awaasak, katabatanamu wachi wami natonkwasak, ananama anian namana wipi wanikak, ananama anian asinat wipi sompwag. Creator and ancestors, we thank you for all things. We thank you for the sky. We thank you for the stars. We thank you for the land. We thank you for the rivers. We thank you for the oceans. We thank you for all animals. We thank you for all of our relations. Help us to see only what is good and help us to do only what is right. Anaj, let it be this way. I just want to say Katabaton Tamawish, which is a formal way of saying thank you for this time and this opportunity and all the great work that you are doing. And also welcome you to the lands of the Mashpee Wampanoag. The Wampanoag Nation has been here since time immemorial. We had 69 villages prior to contact, and now we have about 4, maybe 5 remaining communities here in Mashpee. Mashpee means the place of the great waters. We're known for the largest fresh body of water here on Cape Cod. And the Wampanoag are the original people of this land. Our creation stories tell us that we have always been here. And it's great to see Chairwoman Melissa Ferretti from the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe on this council as well. And just wanted to say Kunipiamu, which is a formal way of saying thank you and welcome to these lands. And thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of our ancestors and future generations. I hope you have a great meeting. Katabatesh.
Thank you, Chairman. And now I will proceed to roll call. Maria Helen here, Melissa Ferretti.
Here.
Lydia Lowe.
Here.
Caroline Hahn.
Here.
Peter Matthey.
Here.
Cheryl Hawley.
Here.
Madeline Fraser Cook.
Here.
Sophia Owen. Here. Ari Zorn. Has Ari joined? No.
Not yet.
Okay.
He is here, but we can't hear him. I'm looking at him on Zoom.
So that might be the Vietnamese interpreter who joined using his link. Let me message the Vietnamese recording room.
Okay. Kalila Barnett.
Here.
Namrita Kapoor.
Here.
Miles Gresham. Has Miles joined?
Not yet.
Pat Spence. And Pat has not joined, right, Kessel?
No, I do not believe so.
Jen, I think actually Jen Selenetti and Marcos Luna are not joining. So Kessel, we do have quorum, right?
I believe so. I think Ari is in the Vietnamese room. Nell, would you be able to take him out of the Vietnamese room? But yes, we have Kalila, Madeline, 2.
We need 7. No, we need 8.
Yes, I believe we have 8.
Okay, thank you. And now we will move to approving the minutes. I sent the minutes earlier and we'll open it. Well, I guess I'll move to approve the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Say aye. I'll say aye if you approve.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And now we will move towards the public comment period. So Kessel, I think you're seeing the chat, right? Or if folks have raised hands.
I don't believe anybody has raised their hand yet, but there is one question in the Q&A box right now.
Okay, do you want to read it?
This is from David Dow. Cape Cod has many seniors who are searching for affordable apartments or senior assisted living locales to rent. Will they be included in the definition of environmental justice population since the rents exceed 30% of their income?
Is that it?
And that
Kessel?
is the only question in the box right now.
Okay.
We have somebody just raised their hand. I'm going to unmute you. All right, Stephen, I believe you should be allowed to, you're allowed to talk now.
Yes, it's a comment, but more of a question, I guess. The tabled motion on the definition of environmental justice kind of makes me wonder how one can have a discussion, a group's discussion, on a concept that has yet to be defined, at least by the group. And also, of course, there is a federal, or maybe even, yes, because of federal grants and the interconnection of all these different actions and infrastructure and so forth and so on, I guess it would be nice if everybody had the same idea and preferably the same definition, so that everybody was talking with a similar language and not misunderstanding each other in that respect. So that's my comment. You don't have to respond. I just wanted to point out that whatever is said tonight might be a little ambiguous. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think are there other hands or questions, Kessel?
There are no other hands and no other open questions right now.
So since we've sort of started doing these hybrid, we have allotted a little bit of time for question and answer or comment and answer at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. So because we do have a little bit of time, I'll just address the first question and the second comment. One is, there is a threshold for income in terms of the definition. And so for the folks who you mentioned around seniors who cannot find affordable housing, there is an income threshold in our definition, our meaning the Massachusetts definition. And so if a community is not considered environmental justice, but they would like to be sort of considered under law, they can petition the secretary. But I think the main sort of criteria that I heard in your question was income. And so that block group or that community might fall under the income criteria. But I'm also happy to provide more information offline. So maybe we can get the person's email or, well, I guess if you would like to put your email in the chat, that would be great. And then I can follow up with you. And then the second comment around the definition is we do have a Massachusetts definition, the legal definition of what it means to be an environmental justice population. And like I said, the three criteria are, I talked about one being income, but there are really four criteria, but there are sort of three buckets of what what classifies an environmental justice population. Is the first is income, the second one is language proficiency, and the third one is racial and cultural identity. And so those three are the main criteria. And then there's a fourth one for the race criteria that is combined with income. And so I don't want to say the wrong percentages compared to the state median income and the local income or the block group. So I will we can post that on our site after this meeting as a reminder of the criteria for defining environmental justice population, as well as the thresholds for each of the criteria under race, income, language, and then that fourth one that combines race and income. Do the council members have any sort of comments or answers to the first couple questions that we got? And if we don't, that's okay. I just want to make sure there's space for council members to respond if they'd like to.
I feel like you covered it.
Great. So now we'll move to a briefing from Undersecretary Mike Judge. And so Mike is my colleague. Hi, Undersecretary.
Hey.
He is the Undersecretary of Energy, and he has been working really hard on CEISP, which again is the Commission on Energy and Infrastructure, Siting and Permitting. And so he'll be giving. Say that again.
It's a terrible acronym.
I know.
But,
trying not to use acronyms here.
yeah. So.
Yeah,
yes.
but I'll just pass it to you, Undersecretary. He'll give us a brief background about CEISP and what the sort of the calling and the mission is of that commission, of the group, and maybe where sort of EJ council members can weigh in. But I'll pass it to you, Undersecretary.
Great, thank you. So I didn't prepare any slides today, but I'll just try to kind of give it an outline of what the commission is, what our charge is, and what the timeline is for completing some of the tasks that are before us. So for those of you who don't know, the commission was established pursuant to an executive order issued by the governor earlier, or not this year, it's 2024 now, last year, in September of last year. So Executive Order 620 required the establishment of this commission, and the commission is responsible for advising the governor on 3 specific items. So the 3 tasks that we're charged with are accelerating the responsible deployment of clean energy infrastructure through siting and permitting reform in a manner that's consistent with our clean energy and climate plans. Facilitating community input into the siting and permitting of clean energy infrastructure, and ensuring that the benefits of the clean energy transition are shared equitably among all residents of the Commonwealth. So the recommendations that we're going to be putting forth to the governor could be administrative recommendations, so changes to existing processes that agencies already have, regulatory processes which require some kind of formal rulemaking process, or legislative changes, so changes to existing state law. The recommendations need to be made and delivered to the governor by March 31st of this year. So it's a fairly quick time frame that we're operating under. And we commenced our work in October. We've had 6 meetings to date. We've formed working groups to identify and work through different specific issues. And our work is supported by a couple different groups. So one of the groups is this interagency task force, which includes most of the agencies that are under the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. So, for example, the Department of Public Utilities, the Energy Facilities Siting Board, the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act Office, Department of Environmental Protection, Department of Fish and Game. All of them are part of this task force, along with a whole bunch of other agencies. And they are advising the commission as it conducts its work. But we're also supported by a group of 12 attorneys called the Siting Practitioners Advisory Group. So these are attorneys with, in some cases, decades of experience in siting and permitting of energy infrastructure, who know the laws intimately and know some of the issues that persist. So just as a little bit of background as to why we're doing this, our clean energy and climate plan for 2025 and 2030 and 2050 calls for a significant amount of new generation capacity to be deployed in order to achieve our greenhouse gas reduction limits that are set in law. And for 2030 alone, that requires the construction of a new transmission line between Canada and the United States. So the modeling that was done to calculate this requires the construction of a new transmission line from Canada down to New England, the Northeast Clean Energy Connect transmission line. That's one component of it. It also requires the construction of 3,200 megawatts of new offshore wind generation capacity and over 8,000 megawatts of new solar generating capacity. To date, the only thing of those three things that is constructed is about 4,000 megawatts of solar. So between now and 2030, what our clean energy and climate plan says we need to do is roughly double the amount of solar that we've deployed over the last 15 years or so. And also add 3,200 megawatts of offshore wind. We've just started getting some of those projects online, but that's going to be a very tall, it's going to be a very challenging task. And get this transmission line connected. That transmission line is back on schedule. It seems likely that will happen, but there's a lot of generation infrastructure that needs to be deployed across the state and across the region in order to achieve those clean energy and climate plan, the limits set under the clean energy and climate plan. In addition to that, we're also trying to electrify all of our transportation sector and our building sector. So vehicles and heating, they're going to be electrified, and we're converting from gas and oil and propane to electric, and gasoline and internal combustion engine vehicles to electric as well. And as a result of that, electric load, the amount of electricity that we're consuming is going to grow by as much as 50% by the middle of next decade. So that's going to require a huge amount of utility infrastructure to be deployed. We're trying to be as efficient as possible in how we do that, but there's no way of escaping the fact that it's going to require new power lines, new substations, and a lot of new equipment to be deployed in every community in the Commonwealth. No community is going to escape this, and it's every community is going to be seeing more of this infrastructure in order to meet our electric demand needs and our clean energy needs. And just to give a sense of like how quickly we need to ramp up just on the solar alone, I'll give you one example. We need to install as much solar every year between now and 2030 as the most amount that we've ever installed in 1 year. So the most we've ever installed in 1 year is about 600 megawatts. We have to do that every single year between now and 2030. Right now, we're installing about half that. So we need to double the rate at which solar is being deployed. We need to be deploying over the long term about 1,000 megawatts of offshore wind a year. We currently have about 90 megawatts that's installed, but not actually all operating yet. So there's huge growth that has to happen here. And the other piece is the transmission and distribution infrastructure, so utility infrastructure. In the electric sector modernization plans that the utilities have developed, which are going to be filed with the Department of Public Utilities for review later this month. These were developed last year. Eversource alone identified that they need to build 17 new substations by 2035 and upgrade 26 existing ones. National Grid has identified they need to build 28 new substations and upgrade 17 new ones. And then beyond that, till 2050, they have to deploy a significant amount more as well. So there's just a lot of building that needs to happen in a very compressed time frame. And there's a lot of concern that our existing permitting frameworks are overly complex, that there's a lot of overlap between them, and that some of these projects just take years and years and years to deploy, and that we might not have the time to actually go through to utilize the existing permitting procedures. So we're looking at what other jurisdictions have done, what other states have done. Particularly a couple models that come to mind are what's going on in New York has been looked at in some detail. What's going on in Rhode Island has been looked at. There's a couple legislative proposals in Massachusetts that are being examined. And so the commission is really digging in on all these things. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier, actually, sorry, is the makeup of the commission. So the commission is comprised of, I think we have 28 or so individuals. I can't remember how many actual commission members we have, but it's a few individuals from state government. So from energy and environmental affairs, from economic development, from housing and livable communities, from labor and workforce development. We have representatives there. We have municipal interests that are represented. We have environmental justice organizations that are represented. We have environmental advocate organizations that are agricultural interests, housing and economic and commercial developers. We have clean energy developers that are represented, and we have utilities. And I may have forgotten something, but it's a good I think a representative example of the types of organizations that are part of this commission. So we really tried to cast we really tried to make sure that anyone who's impacted by this has a seat at the table and has a voice in the discussion. And then the last thing I wanted to mention too is the two of the three charges that are put before the commission, I think, relate very closely to environmental justice and community engagement. It's really critical that communities have input into these siting processes. I think a lot of times people can view community engagement, community input, and expediency as being in conflict. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think they need to be. I think that we're working through those issues, and we want to make sure that communities feel heard in these siting and permitting processes, that they're engaged early in the process, that they have clear visibility into when they're supposed to be participating in these processes, and that where impacts can be avoided, communities can ensure that they can have alternatives proposed, and that mitigation efforts can be proposed, that there's adequate community benefits for a lot of this infrastructure that's going to be deployed. And so there's really a lot of effort underway right now to try to find a way to expedite this process, but ensure that communities have adequate engagement and input and are able to influence the siting and permitting decisions that are being made across the Commonwealth. So we're very, very much in the midst of our discussions, and there's a lot of work that remains to be done over the next 2.5 months. But we've started to, in the last month or so, really dig into, actually maybe even just the last couple of weeks, really dig into some concrete solutions that have been put on the table that we're now reacting to and trying to evaluate and work through the process. So I think that's probably about it. I mean, and I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have.
Thank you, Undersecretary. This is a topic that I did want to, or a topic on the agenda that I did want to bring from our last meeting. The council expressed a huge desire to hear from the agencies or to hear from the administration on the different initiatives. And this commission is particularly important because of the timing of it, and because timing meaning just how urgent the need is to electrify, and then coupling that or balancing that, I guess, with environmental justice is critical. Undersecretary Judge mentioned this, and I just want to emphasize that it is really important to realize and to know that we can move quick, and we can do it in a just and equitable way, that those two are not opposites to each other, but we just have to be really meaningful about it. Otherwise, we can move really fast and leave communities and folks behind, and we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're moving in a fast pace to meet the climate goals, but as well as doing it in a meaningful and equitable way to really make sure that environmental justice communities don't bear a disproportionate burden in this transition to clean energy. So I'm going to open it up to the council members. If you have questions or comments for Undersecretary Judge, I think we do have a little bit of. I'll open it up right now, and then I'll figure out how long we have until our next agenda item. Sophia. So, okay, so
there's a question in
I'll
the
go
queue.
Sophia and then Caroline Hahn. And then
There's a question in the Q&A too, a written one.
Okay, maybe Kessel, maybe you can help me manage the raised hands and the Q&As, and I'll go with Sophia first, and then go to the screen to folks who have virtually raised their hand.
Mm-hmm. And the question in the Q&A box, I think, is a more general question, not necessarily for you, Undersecretary, but
okay,
I can still read it out.
Great, thank you. So Sophia, and then Caroline, and then Kalila.
Thank you, Undersecretary. And thank you for that overview, Undersecretary Judge. I'm glad to hear the update on where things are and the reminder about the fact that we can move on these urgently needed projects at speeds that make it possible for the people most impacted and burdened by them to not only participate in processes, but have a say in what is cited. That's key to environmental justice. I know folks know. 2 questions. One is, I know there was a mention of both proposals of processes in other states and of legislation that's currently pending in Massachusetts. And so one question is just a timing and process question. Is there anything that you can say in terms of like when the commission expects to have a report and how that aligns with the legislative timeline? So that's one. And then the second question is, I know there are environmental justice representatives and representatives from EJ populations and organizations that work in those neighborhoods on the council, but I'm curious whether there is a plan to have the commission interact directly with EJ organizations separate and apart from those who are on the commission themselves, and or just residents in places where EJ organizations don't exist, because there's not an ACE or an Arise or a Green Roots in every community.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So on the first point, I think it was how it interacts with sort of the existing legislative process. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
This is what I've heard in our meeting. So Chair Roy and Chair Barrett of the Telecommunications, Utility and Energy Committee, they are on the commission. So they sit in our meetings. Chairman Roy has a bill that he's proposed, and he's described it as sort of a vehicle. He's like, he's open to changes. But in discussing it, he said, he indicated that he thought something might come out of that committee in advance of the recommendations being finalized by the commission. So I think it's likely that you may see a bill advance in the legislature, may not necessarily be voted on and enacted by one of the houses, but advance out of committee before recommendations come out. There's very much an understanding that these recommendations will shape the final product that the legislature is debating. So I think you may see something as soon as next month come out of committee is some of the things, some of the indications I've heard, but that doesn't mean that the process is done and that we won't have the ability to shape that. That's very much the intent here, is for the recommendations of this commission to hopefully inform the legislature as they go through their deliberative process this spring and into the early summer. And then on the second question, in terms of engagement with parties outside of the commission, what we are, it's a bit fluid right now because things are moving kind of quickly. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of developments in reactions to some of the proposals that were put forward at our last commission meeting. So I'll just let you know, one of the things that was a proposal that was advanced was to create a consolidated one-stop shop permitting process that would be optional to facilities, not to all facilities. Some facilities.
You're a little bit, sorry, I think you're a little bit muffled. I don't know if it's on our end or your end.
Okay, I'll try to be a little clearer.
No, it's not. It's audio definitely
No,
issues,
sometimes
not your voice.
Yeah. So the what was I saying? We just had a presentation last week from some of the participants in the process to create a consolidated one-stop shop permitting process. So we basically eliminate the energy facility siting board as it exists today and replace it with a new energy facility siting board with different parameters and requirements. The process would be sort of an opt-in process, so not every project would be required to go through this. The projects that have to go through it today would still have to go through it, but new projects would be allowed to go through this process. So we're in the midst of reacting to that as a group. There's a lot of discussions happening. It's a very fluid discussion, but my intent from the get-go was to ensure that projects had or that members of the public rather had the opportunity to weigh in on some of the things we were discussing. So I don't know exactly what form this is going to take yet, but our next commission meeting is scheduled for January 24th. Immediately following that, I would like to develop some kind of document or information, put some publicly available information that we put out to the general public so that people can respond and provide commentary to us. And we may have some kind of public forum that I haven't quite decided yet, because it's, again, I want to make sure that we have something meaningful to share with the public for people to react to, and that it is descriptive enough of where we're at in the process. But there's definitely going to be some element of public engagement that occurs in February, where we try to seek some input from the public on the direction we might be heading in. So there's not with the compressed time frame that we're operating under, the number of individuals that are involved in this process, it may be too difficult to engage directly with individual groups, but we're going to try to create some opportunity for the public to weigh in on the direction that the commission is heading prior to issuing our final report at the end of March. And at that point, I mean, it'll be out in the public, and it's not there's other engagement opportunities that will exist after that date, because this won't be this won't be completely finished. You know, it's a set of recommendations. It's not a final framework that's being voted on. So there will be additional opportunities for the public to engage, and I'm very hopeful that we'll have a formal engagement process sometime next year.
One, if I might, just one follow-up thought. This is Sophia again. I'm sure that you're familiar with this, but the report that was done by the Attorney General's office with engagement from many organizations around the barriers to participation in EFSB and DPU had a pretty robust process to solicit comments and reflections from people on what issues are that they're concerned about. And so that could be a place to look for potential outreach that of varying types. Like there were surveys, there were in-person conversations, there was the working group that met, I think, weekly for many months. And I know Commissioner Rubin was deeply involved in those discussions and is aware of the report as well. But I do hope that there is an opportunity for deeper discussion, particularly with some of the EJ organizations, separate and apart from those that are on the commission. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say that we're very aware of that report. That the groups presented on that, and there was a number of discussions about it. And I do also think that whatever may come out of this process, let's say there's a new legislative framework, there's a lot of discussion about giving authority to whatever agency is entrusted with this to develop a new regulatory process. So let's say that's the Energy Facility Siting Board. They would have to go develop regulations that would go out for public comment. There'd be stakeholder process. So there's a lot more opportunities for input before any new permitting framework goes fully into place.
Thank you. I see, I think Kalila, and then Kessel, and then maybe you can help me see if there are other hands raised.
Yes, I believe Namrita had her hand raised, but I don't see it right now.
Okay, so we'll go with Kalila, and Namrita, if you have a question, we can go to you afterwards.
Yeah, I was curious if you could maybe just provide a little bit more detail on how the commission, like the work that you all are doing, is incorporating environmental justice. Like what tools are you using, what practices do you all have in your conversations that you think will impact how the recommendations come out?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, there's a number of advocates that are members of the commission at the groups. So we have, it's actually a little fluid. There's been a couple of membership changes as of late, but we have a number of organizations that are weighing in and are they're specific, you know, they're specifically representing environmental justice organizations and interests on the commission. And we have a number of some of the environmental advocacy groups that are participants on it are as well. So it's I will say it has been a focus. A lot of the discussion as of late is how you design the community engagement piece of whatever the permitting framework is. Somewhat depends on what the framework is itself. So if you have a one-stop consolidated permitting process, that's going to look a lot different. Well, how you set up the engagement process will look a lot different than how you might set up the engagement process for the existing process that we have today, where you have, you know, local permitting processes and a variety of different state permitting processes that layer on top of that, where there's multiple avenues and venues where people can participate. So a lot of what we've been trying to do is figure out what's the overarching framework for how the permitting process is going to work going forward, and then layering into that, what's the best way for how do we best engage communities, allow communities to engage in that process. But I think if people want to be engaged in this, the list of our commission members is public, and I would encourage you to reach out to them because they can help bring any concerns or proposals or other things to the attention of the commission. That's really what we've tried to do, is try to create this very representative body. You can't be, it's impossible to have 100 people in the room at a time and really get to a very deliberative process, but we are committed to having additional public engagement process as this process goes on, and we encourage people to contact people that you know on the commission or people who are representing interests or concerns that you may have, to raise your concerns to them, because they're able to influence the process. And so I've been trying to steer people to those individuals where I can. For example, I had a municipal official contacting us the other day asking about what was going on, and I said you should contact the person who's representing the Massachusetts Municipal Association. There's a designated representative who is trying to represent your interests on this commission. So I think the same thing applies to a lot of the environmental justice concerns and environmental advocate concerns that are being raised at the commission level.
And where is the website where we find information?
I will send a link. I'll make sure that it's actually just a press release. So unfortunately, but I will send a link. I can make sure that everyone has the list of commission members and contact information should you choose to do that. There's no concerns about sharing that. So I'll make sure that gets disseminated to this group.
Thank you, Undersecretary and Kalila. Namrita, did you want to ask a question, or has it been sort of addressed?
Yeah, I'm all set. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other raised hands or questions in the Q&A chat?
So there's no more council member questions or hands, but we do have a community member who has raised their hand.
I think we'll take one question from outside of the council. We are a little bit over time for this agenda item, but I think if there's one question, we can take that one question from the public, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
All right, Jerry, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be very brief. Under Secretary Judge, I want to applaud the direction, the mission that you've been given, and what I've heard so far about your goals. I think there are two stages. One is the process for the commission to be open and transparent and hear from the community. And I have a sense that you're working very hard on that. And I think the more difficult problem, and I hope you're able to address it, is the whole permitting process. And I speak from the experience of a group of activists from Peabody and surrounding areas on the North Shore. Breathe Clean North Shore was our group, and the Peabody Peaker, which had been in the works for several years and had gone through or been passed over in terms of environmental impact and any kind of serious evaluation. And when we became aware of it, I mean, we had to fight to get information, and we weren't told the truth about what the options were. And, you know, a gas and oil fired peaker plant, it's probably the last one that'll ever be built because they don't make sense economically or in terms of the environment or in terms of the needs in the electrical system. So the engagement of people is so important, and to make the process go quicker, changing the permitting system, but making sure that we're not slipshod, make sure that we're not making major mistakes by going quickly. And if you want to go quickly, engage the community right from the start, because we'd rather work with you than fight you. And so system change, and I wish you luck and success in your work, and thank you for what you're doing.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think that, you know, the idea of engagement early and often is something that we keep, we keep trying to sort of work on and improve in our work every day. Under Secretary Judge, I don't know if you want to answer, or I think it was a comment, not so much a question, but if there was anything you wanted to respond to the person.
No, I think you got it right. I mean, it's an immense challenge, I will say. There's you know, I think it's hard to make everyone happy with whatever framework you come up with or whatever process you come up with. But we're trying our best to make sure that the process is more receptive to community input than a lot of the processes that we've had to date.
Thank you. And I think we're out of time for this agenda item, but thank you, Undersecretary Judge. And if folks have questions, they can reach out to him or to me. And I'm sure.
And I'm assuming there's a way to disseminate the information that I mentioned earlier to the
Yeah, we can definitely also put it, if there's any additional, I guess, information that you wanted to share, we definitely always post minutes and agenda items and all that stuff on our site. And so if there was anything else you wanted to share, we can do that.
I'll make a note of it and then make sure that I'll give that to you or someone tomorrow so that it can be disseminated.
Great, thank you. Thanks. And now I want to introduce Commissioner Chair. We have two commissioners. We have Chair Van Nostrand and Commissioner Rubin, who will talk to us and share their priorities on environmental justice from the Department of Public Utilities. Our Are they on right now? Commissioner Rubin and Commissioner Van Nostrand?
We are here, and
We are
Chair
here.
Van Nostrand is going to start us off. I think Kessel's going to share the slides. Great.
So I'll pass it to you, Chair, and thank you so much for making the time to join us tonight.
Of course. Thank you so much, Maria Boleyn, for giving us the opportunity to present to the Environmental Justice Council tonight. It's a pleasure to join my EEA colleague, Mike Judge, and my DPU colleague, Commissioner Rubin, and just to assist in the great work that the EEA Environmental Justice team of Maria Boleyn and Crystal Johnson are doing. So we could have the next slide. So I just wanted a little bit of background on what the DPU is. So at the bottom of this slide, you have the 3 commissioners. That's me on the left. I was appointed chair on, took office on May 1. Commissioner Rubin, who you'll be hearing from in a little bit, was also appointed in March when I was, and took office in April. Commissioner Fraser has been on the commission since 2017. So she's the most experienced member of the commission. Basically, our job, you probably hear most about us in terms of our rate making function. We have authority over the rates that are charged by the investor-owned electric power, natural gas, and water companies in Massachusetts. You probably hear a little bit about our oversight of the MBTA in terms of the safety of bus companies and the rail transit safety. We also regulate the transportation network companies, in other words, Uber and Lyft. We oversee the safety of natural gas pipelines. So basically, our primary mission, I would say, is to make sure that the consumer rights are protected. Utility companies are providing safe, reasonable, and adequate service at the lowest possible cost. We have about 200 staff members at the agency. If I could have the next slide, please. So this slide pretty much captures our mission. I think, as I mentioned before, I think probably one of the things you hear the most about is our rate setting function, in terms of we have an obligation to balance the interests of the utilities and their shareholders in terms of earning reasonable profits versus keeping costs down for utilities. So striking that balance, making sure that the service provided by the utility is safe and adequate at the lowest possible cost. And along with that, we have service quality concerns in terms of making sure it's secure and reliable. Most recently, some of the climate legislation gave us authority over 3 additional areas, and that's equity, affordability, and greenhouse gas emissions reductions, or clean energy. And so basically, we are integrating all of these missions into our daily work. So I want to introduce Commissioner Rubin. We're going to walk through some of these priorities. Commissioner Rubin we'll talk about transparency, public participation, our environmental justice efforts, and affordability. And then I'll follow up at the end and talk about greenhouse gas reductions or clean energy. So from here, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Commissioner Stacy Rubin.
Thank you so much, Chair Van Nostrand. And it's such a pleasure to work with the chair, and we have such an awesome team at the Department of Public Utilities right now. I'm thrilled to speak to the council tonight. Some of you may know that I have been a supporter of the Environmental Justice Council for many, many years, and was part of a team that required the creation of the council as part of Executive Order 552, signed nearly 10 years ago. So next slide, please. One of our first priorities is to increase transparency. So we are well aware that we don't have a lot of people who know what our agency does. The commission is really committed to expanding what people understand about what we do. We frequently issue written decisions that are hundreds of pages long. We don't expect that many people are going to read them. So we have started issuing 1 to 2 page summaries of our orders for decisions that we expect a lot of people care about them, or it's a longer decision and we want to make sure that somebody can easily pull up the first 2 pages and get the summary. One of the DPU's biggest tasks is to review a utility's proposal if they are seeking to increase the rates that they're filing. So right now, what we've done for those rate cases, we've created case-specific web pages on our website, and it explains what the company is proposing. It explains how we make the decision and how people can get involved and comment on the proposals. We have a strong group of staff who is dedicated to answering public questions. So our consumer division has 6 people. They spend all day, every single day, answering the phone, responding to emails, answering questions. They are incredibly patient. They are multilingual, and they've done a really nice job of getting the utilities in particular to respond to complaints and concerns that are raised. Something that's new for us, DPU for the first time, we are on social media. So check us out on LinkedIn, check us out on X, formerly known as Twitter. Our handle is at @mass_DPU. Follow us if you're interested in getting to see us on social media. So Chair Van Nostrand and I are 2 of the decision makers, as he mentioned, and it's really important to us that we're interacting with the public. So the commission has made a point of going to public hearings. Obviously, the 2 of us are here tonight to speak with you, to hear from you. And we are going to those hearings and we're giving remarks. We're talking to people about how we make decisions and what our priorities are. Next slide, please. Great. So our second priority is about improving public participation. One of my personal goals when I accepted this position about 8 months ago was to hire a staff person whose entire job was dedicated to environmental justice and public participation. So we're doing that. EEA has been such a terrific partner in helping us obtain funding and support for a new position. We are hiring a director of environmental justice and public participation. We hope that person will be with us by the spring. This person is going to lead a new division at the agency really focused on public participation. So we are holding technical conferences. These are gatherings of people, and it's an opportunity for lots of diverse voices to hear from one another. We have increased the number of technical conferences that we have, and these are one of them, the more informal ways that we encourage dialogue. We will continue to have these and make sure that we are ensuring that technical conferences are informing the department's decisions. We're expanding language access. We're committed to ensuring that we hear from and are able to communicate with limited English proficient speakers. We had a recent public hearing in Fitchburg. For example, we had interpretation in Spanish, Portuguese, and an ASL interpreter. We are making sure that our interpreters both are interpreting English into a different language, as well as if a commenter wants to speak in Portuguese, for example, that the person is translating so that the English speakers can understand what the Portuguese speakers are saying. I'm going to be talking momentarily about a decision we just issued, and we translated that into 10 different languages. So we're committed to multilingual communication, but we know that simply having translated materials and simultaneous interpretation is not enough. We're working to ensure that the information that we're providing is accessible and in plain language. And we know we have a lot more work to do to educate the public about what we're doing so that they can influence our decisions. And I will just say, when we hear from public commenters at a hearing, what the staff is doing is taking those comments and asking questions, typically of the utility company or the petitioner, and we're using that to gather evidence in the proceeding that we can use in our decisions. Next slide, please. A third priority for us is adhering to environmental justice principles. This group knows what those principles are very well. In any proposal for clean energy, we consider how the proposal is going to benefit the public, and specifically whether there are benefits for environmental justice populations. We have approved funding for utility companies to create electric vehicle charging infrastructure, specifically in environmental justice populations. And while we don't expect that all drivers, particularly low to moderate income drivers, will be able to purchase or lease an electric vehicle, we need to absolutely make sure that there is charging infrastructure that allows for charging in those locations, specifically for fleet vehicles, school buses, and public transit charging. In Massachusetts, people have an opportunity to choose how they get their energy supply, and people can seek to get their supply from a competitive supplier, or they can work with a municipality if that municipality has a plan approved by our agency. And historically, the DPU has taken a long time to respond to municipal plans for what is called municipal aggregation. We're looking to do a reset. We have a lot of work to do to hear from municipalities and the public about how to make sure that municipal aggregation works better and provides opportunities for municipalities to offer programs that suits local needs and also helps the Commonwealth achieve our climate objectives. I'll briefly share, there's images on this slide of our bus and rail inspectors who are looking at vehicles to make sure that our public transit buses and vehicles are safe for riding. We know ensuring safe transportation is key to contributing to transportation justice. Moving on, just to address a just transition, we are encouraging a just transition for our workforce. We are encouraging the local distribution companies to work with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, labor unions, and other stakeholders to ensure that our decarbonization provides good job opportunities for our gas industry workers and steel workers. And at the same time, we're emphasizing that the clean energy transition really provides opportunities for job prospects for people in underrepresented communities. And that includes people of color, Indigenous peoples, veterans, people with disabilities, immigrants, and others. And I'll just note that this commission really values hearing from people and understanding their lived experience. Next slide. Our fourth priority is about affordability. So last week, we opened a new proceeding specific to energy burden. So energy burden is the percentage of a household's income spent on utility bills. The average energy burden in Massachusetts is 3%. However, low and moderate income populations have an average of 10%, and we see certain neighborhoods in the Commonwealth are experiencing an energy burden that is as high as 31%. We are aware that the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy has identified households with an energy burden of 6% or higher is a high energy burden household. So that means that low and moderate income households around the Commonwealth are dealing with much higher than average energy burden, and they have to make choices between paying their bills or paying for food or medicine. So we want to hear from people about how they are experiencing the energy burden. We want to hear from a lot of voices. We are collecting comments in writing by March 1st. After that, our staff is going to review the comments. We're going to bring people together in a technical conference, and we're going to start the conversation to figure out how we can make the energy burden lessened for low to moderate income residents. I just will highlight, we asked at least 25 questions in our order opening this proceeding. One of them is, what does the energy burden look like for you? We also ask a question about, should the maximum cap as a percentage of household income paid be set below 6%, for example, for customers who are experiencing a disproportionate burden of energy infrastructure in their neighborhood. And with that, I'll turn it back to Chair Van Nostrand for our last priority.
Thanks, Commissioner Rubin. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about another priority was reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, which more broadly is clean energy. And I think probably one of the most major orders that we've issued since Commissioner Rubin and I joined the commission was the 2080 order, which is known as the Future of Gas proceeding. We issued that order on December 6th. As Undersecretary Judge mentioned. The Clean Energy, Clean Climate Plan really articulated some greenhouse gas sector limits. Basically, the Commonwealth has adopted a broader goal of net zero carbon by 2050, but then there's also sector sublimits. And what we tried to do in 2080 was basically figure out what kind of policies do we need to put in place so that the gas distribution companies in the state would be on a path to achieve those sector sublimits, to get us on that path to achieve that net zero carbon by 2050. So, what we're looking at is the objectives in the order are basically to promote a regulatory framework that's fair to consumers, equitable, flexible, and provides consideration of the current and future technologies required to meet our clean energy objectives. So one of the things we're doing in that order is we're trying to dissuade gas customer expansion, align the process for setting rates with the climate goals of the Commonwealth. One example is we'll make it clear that no cost recovery for the marketing and promotion of natural gas can be permitted in future proceedings. We basically want to discourage further expansion of the natural gas distribution system. A big part of the order is we're imposing a new requirement that the LDCs, the local gas distribution companies, we want them to consider whether there are non-gas pipe alternatives that might be available that will make that additional investment in the gas infrastructure unnecessary. These alternatives could include electrification. In other words, replace that natural gas fired furnace with an electric heat pump. It can include network geothermal, which I'll talk about in a minute. It can also include targeted energy efficiency. But are there things that we can do to avoid having to build additional natural gas infrastructure? As we phase out the natural gas distribution system, we want to avoid making additional investment in these distribution systems that may potentially become stranded and having to deal with those costs. So part of the order is we want the gas companies to deploy targeted electrification pilot projects. In other words, can you decommission part of a gas service territory and replace those gas furnaces with electric heat pumps? And we also have the network geothermal demonstration projects. And the photos we have here is the network geothermal demonstration project that's currently underway. It's the Eversource project in Framingham. So this is a visit, I think Commissioner Rubin in this case, to the Eversource Framingham Network Geothermal Program, which is taking place in an EJ population. And going back to the point that Commissioner Rubin made about the transition of the energy workforce, we've both toured this particular project. I think when you look at what network geothermal is, it's roughly a 1 mile loop. There are 3 places where they're drilling down 600 feet to create the boreholes to access this relatively constant 50-degree temperature underground. And then from there, you're just pretty much laying pipe down the middle of the street with laterals out to houses that basically service these ground source electric heat pumps within each house. So in terms of the natural gas transition, the just transition, it looks a lot like what a gas company currently does, right? We run pipe down the middle of the street with laterals out to houses. So we think it's a technology that was pretty much invented here in Massachusetts. We're pretty excited about it. That's going to be part of the solution, we think. And so part of what we're doing in this order is directing the utilities to consider exploring more of those network geothermal demonstration projects as well as electrification through ground source heat pumps. Another thing we're going to do is to make sure the gas utilities are on a pathway to get to those net zero by 2050 is we're going to require these climate compliance plans beginning in April of 2025. Show us that you're on a path to achieve those reductions. And I think another thing that's going to be relatively new to us is required coordination between the electric distribution companies, the Eversource and the national grids, with the gas companies, because when you think about, do we have that electric service capability to accommodate electrification, electric heat pumps, making sure, because you're basically doing that joint planning where you're looking at a gas system, do you have a possibility to decommission a portion of a gas service territory, which will depend in some extent on whether or not there's the electric system capability. So that's the new kind of activity that we're going to be engaging in as we move into this clean energy, this broader decarbonization efforts. Commissioner Rubin mentioned it was part of our public engagement. One of the things we're going to be doing is basically, we're calling them road shows, but it's basically these priorities that we're sharing with you tonight. We want to share them more broadly with the stakeholders throughout Massachusetts. So we're going to have a series of meetings, probably starting in Boston later this spring, but other locations around the state, to share the commission's priorities basically, and share what we're thinking and get some feedback from the public on whether you think we're on the right path. So with this brief presentation, I hope Commissioner Rubin and I gave you a better idea of our priorities, and you can discern our commitment to environmental justice, and we're happy to answer questions. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak to the Environmental Justice Council.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Rubin. I'll open it up for questions. We have about 10 minutes left until I believe, will lose our interpreters. We end it at 8:30 we'll be ending. And so I will allow the next few minutes if council members have questions, they can ask. Otherwise, we can also allow for, if there are Q&A questions in the chat, we can take those too. So I see Namrita and then Kalila, and then Kessel, if you could just let me know if there are any questions in the Q&A. But I'll go to Namrita and then Kalila.
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And I was curious to learn a little bit more. First of all, applauding you for requiring these climate compliance plans. And just wanted to hear a little bit more about sort of how what the oversight of that will be to sort of make sure that it's sort of a valid document that will actually sort of guide these companies towards the goals that you hope they will go towards.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. I mean, I think we need to provide a little bit more guidance. There were decarbonization plans that the gas distribution companies filed as part of the earlier stages of 2080. And one of the things that was made clear was that we need to adjudicate those in individual proceedings. So it's really, given that we have these sector goals, these greenhouse gas limits that we need to hit, it's basically telling the LDCs, the local gas distribution companies, demonstrate that you're on a pathway to get there. And so we have the residential sector, the building sector. So it's going to be looking at electrification, electric heat pumps. It's going to be looking at network geothermal, but industrial processes, they're going to be obligated. We anticipate there may be still some limited use of renewable natural gas and hydrogen for hard to electrify industrial processes, but we expect the utilities to show that they're on a path to get there. So I think it's going to be a rigorous process. I suspect it's going to be a little bit of iterative process in terms of we'll get the first ones in April of 2025. We'll look at those. We'll give them some feedback on what's good, what's not so good, what we expect to see better. But I think it's a really important step to really send the message. And I in my remarks I've given about the 2080 order. I mean, we're either serious about addressing climate change or we're not. We're either serious about getting to these greenhouse gas limits or we're not. And we're really telling the utilities, we want you to show how you're going to get there. And I think another piece of it that I didn't really talk about is are there incentive mechanisms so that we can provide encouragement, performance incentive mechanisms to provide encouragement to basically accelerate this process. That needs to be part of it, is not just a carrot, but also a stick and a carrot. Basically, can you get us on a pathway that's going to get us there more quickly?
Great. One quick follow-up. Would you consider making those plans public?
They'll be public. Yes, definitely. They will be filed with the commission and part of a contested case proceeding where we'll evaluate them. They will definitely be public. They need to be public. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
And we'll see comments on those as well.
Yes. Thanks, Stacey.
And I have a question about comment for the commissioners, the commissioner and the chair. And just from my own personal experience before I came to EEA, how do folks submit public comment? Do they need a lawyer? How long do they have to be? How sort of complicated do they need to be? This is sort of a rhetorical question, but if you can just talk a little bit about, do folks across the state need a lawyer to submit comments? How simple or how long or how complicated or how short can those public comments be?
Commissioner Rubin, I'll let you take this one.
Sure. It's a great question, Under Secretary Power. Comments can be of any length. You do not need a lawyer to file comments. Anybody can file in the energy burden docket that I just mentioned. We've already had people submit, a 2 or 3 sentence email talking about how they are having difficulty paying their bills. But we want to hear from everyone. If you want to give us a 40-page soliloquy in poem format, we will take it. If you want to comment in a group, we'll take it. And when we have public hearings, we take oral as well as written comments. So any format is fine, and you do not need an attorney to file those comments.
Thank you. I'll go to Kalila and then Caroline and then Lydia.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really thorough. My question is about resilience and adaptation. A lot of what you all work on obviously focuses on kind of building clean energy, which is very important. And climate change is here right now, and we are weekly, monthly basis experiencing storms that are very disruptive to our current energy system. So just curious about what role that plays in current and future planning.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Thank you, Kalila. Certainly the department is very interested in climate adaptation and resilience. We are expecting these upcoming electric sector modernization plans, which I believe Undersecretary Judge and Chair Van Nostrand referenced. It's likely that there's going to be some reference to climate resiliency and adaptation. So we will be starting a proceeding at the end of January once we receive those documents from the utilities, and we'll think through whatever is being proposed and decide if there's additional steps that we need to take to make sure that utility infrastructure is planning for the current climate that we have and what we expect to happen in the future. And I don't know if Chair Van Nostrand, you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, Kalila, that's a great question, and it's a subject about which I'm very interested. I was in my prior life, I was an expert witness actually in a utility proceeding involving transmission distribution infrastructure. Are you anticipating future climate extreme weather events? Are you taking that into account? What are you doing to improve the resilience of your system? And I think one of my primary recommendations was, and I think we're seeing this from other states, is it's part of prudent utility practice. The utilities have a burden to demonstrate, as far as I'm concerned. How are you taking anticipated climate change into account? Are you building things in a manner that don't just look at historical climate patterns, but are looking at IPCC scenarios, for example, of where we're likely to see sea level rise, extreme weather events, precipitation, all those sorts of things? You need to demonstrate as part of your burden to recover your costs that you've taken those things into account, because if you don't, you're increasing the risks imposed on customers. You're imposing higher costs in the case of outages. You're imposing greater hardship in the case of outages that might last longer than they need to be. But it's all about holding down the costs and designing your system in a manner that contemplates the future climate, not just what we know from the past. But we're on it, I would say. With the ESMPs that Stacy mentioned is going to be where we're going to start seeing these things. But that's we've started saying some of these things in terms of storm damage reserves, where there's been some complaints about how the cost that utilities are incurring because of storms are going up. Well, yes, they're going up because of extreme weather events. We have more severe storms and they're more frequent, but the utilities are expected to plan for that and do their planning in a manner that minimizes those costs, that minimizes the disruptions due to outages. So we're very mindful of the whole issue. Thanks, Kalila.
Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. I see one more hand, Caroline, and then we have 2 more minutes until we close. So we'll take your question, Caroline, and then I think we're going to move towards closing the meeting.
Great. Well, I'll make it quick. Thank you, commissioners. I think, I'd like to applaud the DPU on your environmental justice priorities. I think they're very admirable, and it actually provides a lot of clarity. Your presentation today provided a lot of clarity that supplemented the draft version of the EEA's environmental justice strategy that we reviewed last year. It wasn't that long ago, but it was in 2023. And so I think that was extremely helpful. So thank you. I guess one of the areas that we had provided comment on and spoken quite a bit about as a council was around metrics and accountability. So I'm curious as to how you're thinking about what measures you may be utilizing to indicate success against the priorities and milestones to see are they working? Are the tactics that we're using working or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Again, that's another matter that's near and dear to me in terms of trying to design. First of all, we need to track the metrics, but then figure out, can we put some performance incentives around those metrics? So we reward the utilities that do an extraordinarily good job of achieving those objectives and maybe penalize those that don't. First, we got to start tracking them well enough. But one of the things I think that's in our broader objectives that we're going to be talking about in these listening or these road shows is basically designing incentive mechanisms that can align what the utilities are trying to do with what we're trying to accomplish in terms of our clean energy goals, in terms of equity, in terms of environmental justice, track the metrics, and then figure out, can we design some performance, some incentives to basically align with those metrics. But again, another great question. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. And with that, we will not have time. We won't have time to have the second piece of the comment period, but we did have one at the beginning. That was one of the things that we've started doing more of, is having the two sections in the agenda for public comment, for folks to ask questions or make a comment at the beginning of the meeting and then at the end of the meeting. So that will take us to closing. For next steps, our next meeting is March 14th. It's on the second Thursday of the month, which is sort of the date that we've all decided will work for most of us most of the time. And the next meeting will be in Worcester. So we are, like I said at the beginning, we're trying to have these meetings hybrid, which means in person with a virtual option, along with other sort of accessibility amenities, I guess, for interpretation and translation. And we are trying to figure out how to do the either providing childcare or having some sort of way to reimbursing or some tool, because we know that participation a lot of times will cost people money. So for them to just participate, transportation and dinner and childcare. So trying to address all of those barriers. So the next meeting will be hybrid. So it will be in person in Worcester with a virtual option. And I know that one of the things that has come up in the past is sort of processes for submitting issues that council members want to submit or proposals. And so one thing that I've heard and I think might be on the agenda item for next meeting, if we can fit it in, is developing those mechanisms for participation from the council members to sort of submit recommendations or make suggestions to the council. So the question about whether we develop bylaws or not, currently the council does not have any bylaws. So that might be a point on the agenda for next meeting. But otherwise, I will end with just thank you very much to everyone who joined and listened in. Thank you to ERG for helping us as always with the very difficult logistics, but trying to make it work so folks can participate. And thank you to the council members for joining in person and remote. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
You can have that. I don't usually print things. I just think it